Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It really is heartwarming to see such a big turnout for paleontology. It really is even touching. But gatherings like these come with a risk. If a meteorite would slam into this aula Q of the VUB, Belgian paleontology would be wiped out. But let's not sound too alarmist. We're happy to have survived the lockdown and so happy to be able to attend events like these again. So welcome to this award ceremony of Palaeontologica Belgica, a very young non-profit organization whose mission it is to support Belgian paleontology, and in particular, paleo enthusiasts. We call them citizen scientists. Citizen scientists often help professional paleontologists by collecting, you need a lot of eyes and a lot of hands during excavations, by documenting the finds, or by consolidating and conserving the specimens. But they often do research themselves. Volunteers can indeed become well-known specialists, as we will see this afternoon. And last but not least, citizen scientists often communicate about paleontology to a broader audience, organizing exhibitions, events that turn out to be very popular sometimes, and some are doing great things on social media. My name is Reinout Verbeke. I am a science communicator at the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, and I have the honor to invite numerous interesting guests and speakers and awardees to this stage. In name of the organizers, I especially wish to welcome our State Secretary for Science Policy, Mr. Thomas Dermine, who will arrive shortly, VB Vice-Rector Research Policy, Karin Vanderkerken, and the De Pauw family, the descendants of Louis De Pauw, the iconic fossil preparator and citizen scientist who will be celebrated during this award ceremony. And also a hello to people watching online through YouTube. It's usually easy to tell a paleontologist apart from an insurance broker. Paleontologists usually don't care for clothes. But even today, in suits and nice blouses, it's easy. I see the difference, because it's all in the eyes. Eyes that blink with curiosity. Eyes that can see through hills and through the ground under our feet, right into deep time. Superheroes, in fact. Instead of an expensive insurance contract, paleontologists sell the history of our planet. And that story of our past is a puzzle containing far too many pieces, a puzzle that will never be totally completed, but still worth the try. The more research there is, the more complete the picture becomes. And the more we can inform and inspire a broader and younger audience with what life on this planet looked like during the 4.5 billion years. Paleontology is about evolution. It's about previous climate crises and about the changes they caused. And it's about the scientific method itself and how science evolves and modernizes. This passion and this ambition is what gathers us here this afternoon. I'd like to introduce you to one of the passionate organizers of this event, Anthonie Hellemond, President of Palaeontologica Belgica.
Thank you very much, Reinout, for this wonderful introduction. Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. As president of the Palaeontologica Belgica organization, I would like to welcome you all here to the Vrije Universiteit in Brussels for a very historical event. Historical because today, for the first time, we have the privilege to award 4 different people whose contributions to Belgian paleontology did not remain unnoticed. As you can read in your program, this afternoon will revolve around the presentation of 2 very distinct awards. The Palaeontologica Belgica Award on one side and the Louis De Pauw Award on the other side. Within Belgian paleontology, citizen scientists have been conducting independent and often non-funded research for many decades. Over time, many of these self-taught researchers became renowned experts in their respective fields of research. Even if they can count on numerous accolades from international paleontological communities, there is no official recognition for Belgian citizen scientists from any national scientific or governmental institution here in this country. And today we are proud to be the first organization to award citizen scientists in Belgium in collaboration with Scivil, the Flemish platform for citizen science, and the Vrije Universiteit of Brussels. This annual event is important because rewarding and recognizing the contributions of citizen scientists can help to further narrow the collaborational gap between professional and non-professional researchers. Citizen Science Award presented here today is named after Louis Francois De Pauw, whose name will forever be associated with the world-famous iguanodons of Bernissart, the mammoth of Lier, and countless other iconic fossils who now belong to Belgium's unique paleontological heritage. What I want you all here to realize this afternoon is that Louis De Pauw Award aims to honor the efforts and the contributions of people without any academic background in geology, biology, or paleontology, but who selflessly dedicate themselves to paleontological research in Belgium nonetheless. This award should also be considered as a stimulus for paleontological research in a Belgian framework, and it is also a gesture of appreciation for the countless citizen scientists who are an important asset and driving force in modern-day earth and natural sciences. This award can hopefully be a first step towards the recognition and contribution of citizen scientists within other scientific domains in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride that I stand here before you all today, and I consider it my ambition to see other scientific disciplines follow this example and embrace the collaboration between professional and non-professional researchers. Only by collaborating together as one paleontological community represented by academia, by governmental research institutions, non-profit organizations, industry, and citizen scientists will we be able to move forward towards an inclusive and modern research landscape. Let's all make the promise here and now, today, to work together side by side and tackle the scientific challenges that lie ahead. I am counting on all of you. Thank you very much.
So the Louis De Pauw Award honors citizen scientists in paleontology, but who was De Pauw? Notorious in his time, but now maybe a little forgotten. Mrs. Sandra Cordier, a graphic designer and citizen scientist herself, did 7 years of research to write a book about one of the world's most important findings in paleontology, the Bernissart iguanodons, conserved and on display at the Museum of Natural Sciences here in Brussels. And maybe without preparator Louis De Pauw, Belgium wouldn't have had such a world-class treasure. Mrs. Cordier will take you back to that tremendous discovery in 1878 and highlight the life and works of master preparator and citizen scientist Louis De Pauw.
Good afternoon, citizen scientists, citizens and scientists. I'm very honored to be invited by Palaeontologica Belgica to present someone that I admire and got to know about 10 years ago. He is the person for whom we are gathered here today. His name is Louis De Pauw. I met Louis on page 24 in a book about Bernissart and the iguanodons. The photo on the page showed the skeleton of an iguanodon being mounted in what seemed like to be a church. In front of the skeleton were some men. The caption beneath the photo read, "The man with the beard and the raised knee is Louis De Pauw." That was the first time we met. From that day onward, Louis and I would meet every day for the next 7 years. I dare to say I felt some kind of connection with him while I wrote my book about the bones of the Borinage, the bones he once collected and mounted. The more I got to know him, the more I wanted to know about him, and the more I got to admire him. I will not sum up all the data and details of his work and contributions he made to Belgium science, which are enormous, and I only have 15 minutes. Therefore, I will highlight some of Louis' incredible and idiosyncratic talents, whose name was rightly chosen for this award. Louis was born in 1844 in a Flemish town called Sint-Niklaas als Ludovicus Franciscus De Pauw. His father signed the birth certificate of his son De Pauw in one word. Louis' early life is little is known about Louis' early life, but I think it is fair to say that he wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. The following story will sound familiar to many of you in the audience. De Pauw's love for studying was so great that despite his limited means as a young man, he saved penny by penny the amount that would put him in possession of Georges Cuvier's French edition of Research on the Fossil Bones of Quadrupeds. This illustrates a man, according to a friend, with a persistent character, whose energy never weakened and who patiently but straightforwardly pursued the goal he was striving for. His peers called Louis an intelligent, self-made man. His life was marked by self-development through study. Louis, being just 20, earned his living as a taxidermist in Aalst, when one day he got this brilliant idea of preparing both the skin and the skeleton of the same specimen. He thought that was a time-saving and money-saving procedure and interesting from a scientific point of view. Louis had swagger. He was bold and beautiful, and I find he looked like a hipster. Louis went to Brussels to pitch his idea to the then director of the Royal Natural History Museum. Shortly afterwards, in 1865, Louis started working at the museum as an assistant preparator. At that time, the skeleton of a woolly mammoth lay in the museum's basement. Nobody thought of mounting the gigantic fossil when Louis worked on his invention he called a mobile mounting system. This invention consisted of attaching each piece of bone to an iron frame by means of a pressure screw. This way, no bone would be pierced. His system made it possible to remove or treat each individual bone without the need to dismantle the entire skeleton. Meanwhile, a new director was appointed, and once again, Louis took the initiative and pitched his invention. The director was convinced, and Louis got to mount the woolly mammoth that would give him international credit. He worked straight for 10 months in the dungeon of the institution. Thanks to his mobile mounting system, the entire skeleton could be dismantled in 30 minutes and reassembled in 65. In 1869, the mammoth went on display, and it was called a masterpiece. A synergy developed between the museum's brand new director, Edouard Dupont, and Louis. Dupont was 27 and Louis 25. One grew up in an intellectual environment in Dinant and was trained as a doctor of natural sciences. The other one grew up in Flanders and was his own teacher. A new wind was blowing in the museum, and Dupont sent Louis to 23 cities in Europe. It is difficult to imagine in 2021 that one got to travel to Europe without Ryanair or a smartphone. Yet Louis did. And he acquired the information and techniques he needed to become a master in osteology and comparative anatomy and gain an international reputation. In 1878, the fossils of 30 iguanodons, some turtles and crocodiles were found in Bernissart. "Send De Pauw, urgent," wrote the chief engineer of the mining department in a telegram. The engineer met Louis some years before when Louis came to determine the animal bones which he found in a cave in the valley of the Meuse. The father of the iguanodons, as Louis was called by his friends, dived into the Bernissart coal mine for 3 years. He was assisted by miners, confronted with conservation problems, making sketches on the site, writing observation notes. He organized the excavations at a depth of 322 and 365 meters. Louis decided, although it would later prove to be wrong, to reconstruct skeletons upright using his mobile mounting system. There you can see Louis in front of the iguanodon being mounted in 1883. In 1884, Louis resigned from the museum and went to work for the Free University of Brussels. The zoological, anatomical, and paleontological collections were entrusted to Louis for over 25 years. The students liked him and called him Father De Pauw. We mention Louis' name in the same breath as the woolly mammoth, the bones of the Borinage, and the fossilized marine mammals of Antwerp. But Louis was more than the skeletons he reconstructed, the animals he preserved, or the bones he identified. Besides zoology and paleontology, Louis made his mark in the discipline of anthropology. He was a member of the Société d'Anthropologie de Bruxelles and managed their collection. He was also a member of the Société d'études coloniales, which founded a colonial school in 1895, where Louis taught the tricks of taxidermy. He taught soldiers and colonials how to collect and describe natural or historical specimens in Congo Free State and how to process animal skins so that the pieces would arrive in good condition for the temporary World Exhibition of 1997 in Brussels, which would later become the permanent collection of the Museum of Tervuren. Fate can be cruel. One who unfortunately met his death during an expedition to expand the collections of Congolese wildlife was Louis' nephew Alexander. Alexander was the son of Henry Solon, with whom Louis reconstructed the skeleton of the Dinotherium in Romania. Alexander worked as an assistant preparator at the university under the care of Louis. In October 1996, Alexander left for Congo Free State, where he died in 1897. He was 22 years old and never got to see the diorama his uncle had prepared. Louis never stopped being passionate about the past, whether it being human or animal. He gathered a collection of flints that numbered 1,000 pieces. Another remarkable collection of his consists of 500 dog skulls, ranging from an Australian dingo to a Cavalier King Charles. But Louis collected not only skulls and artifacts, but above all, knowledge and appreciation. Yet it strikes me that Louis, who was consulted on a zoological, anthropological, and archaeological level and came to give explanations about every potsherd or bone in the societies concerned, he never published alone, but also always in collaboration with an academic. Almost 25 years later, in 1902, Louis published about the discovery and reconstruction of the iguanodons and explained his extraction method, his ingenious scaffolding, the means and preserve and strengthening the bones that had been affected by pyrite, and he explained why he thought the animal roamed the world on 2 instead of 4 feet. Louis' first attempt to reconstruct a skeleton was at the same time an application for funding. The limbs and tail of the skeleton were completed with a drawing of the missing parts. Louis compared the posture of the iguanodon with that of a kangaroo or an ostrich. The image from 1878 is not a stage in the process of assembling the iguanodon for its exhibition in 1883. But Louis was only appreciated for his technical ingenuity and skills. His work was minimized to he who led the excavations at Bernissart. Louis wasn't praised for his pioneering work. In 1882, the museum hired someone else for the formal description of the newly discovered species, although it was Louis who had been working on the skeletons for 4 years. Reading his publication, Between the Lines, I say Louis felt overlooked, and that's why he eventually resigned from the museum. Knighted by kings and praised by scientists, amateurs, friends, and students alike, Louis died in 1918. Today, a new generation of scientists and citizen scientists rightly honor Louis-Francois De Pauw for his work and his contribution, which is exhibited in museums and stored in our institutions. The term citizen scientist is relatively new. It certainly sounds much better than amateur, for amateur is often considered a non-professional, but in my experience, never unprofessional. The work done by an amateur can easily compete with that of a professional. In the words of Louis' friend, through hard work, Louis assimilated the knowledge that the fortunate draw from a university education. It is my personal conviction that in times of fake news, alternative facts, and conspiracy theories, we need people to dare to seek and stand up for the truth, be it an academic or a citizen. As citizens and scientists, we have an obligation to contribute to a society where science is validated and acknowledged. That is what I learned from Louis' motto being Scientia and Conscientia. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Palaeontologica Belgica.
Thank you, Sandra Cordier, for this interesting and passionate talk. The De Pauw family is here, so I would ask the great-grandchildren Patrick and Alain De Pauw to the stage. Would you come to the stage?
Please join the stage.
Welcome, and I'd like you to it's a small gesture, but when you push this button, there will be a dedicated page about Louis De Pauw that is going online.
No way.
So when you push the button...
Together. Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, voilà. It's a detailed Wikipedia page written by Sandra Cordier. So it's online. Louis De Pauw exists now. So if you would like to say something, un petit mot.
On pourrait dire un petit peu à l'improviste, de manière un peu impromptue, mais c'est un plaisir pour mon frère et moi, bien sûr, d'être ici cet après-midi pour honorer la mémoire de notre arrière-grand-père. Je me souviens que dans le bureau de mon père, pour lequel mon frère et moi avons une admiration considérable et une affection immense, il avait sur son cache-éjecto dans son bureau le portrait, le bronze de son grand-père, donc de notre arrière-grand-père, Louis De Pauw. Il en parlait d'ailleurs toujours avec énormément de gentillesse. Il se reconnaissait un petit peu en lui parce que tous les deux, si j'ai bien compris aujourd'hui, parce que par les explications que vous avez données, étaient des self-made men, quand même assez remarquables. Quand nous voyons le départ de notre famille, je trouve qu'elle a bien évolué, si je puis m'exprimer ainsi, au fil du temps. Car je dirais que peut-être que mon père, s'en inspirant également, était self-made man et avait été, à l'âge de 13 ans, comme vous le savez, en partance pour Paris, pour y vendre les journaux, et à l'âge de 16 à 18 ans, ouvrier tout d'abord chez Skoda et puis chez Dutch. Donc on peut reconnaître également qu'il a eu les gènes de son grand-père pour assurer une réussite exemplaire. Mais évidemment, aujourd'hui, nous ne sommes pas là pour parler de mon père, nous sommes là pour parler de pour mon frère et moi, de notre arrière-grand-père. Et j'avoue que je remercie très chaleureusement et du plus profond de mon cœur et de celui de mon frère, la VUB et toutes les personnes ici présentes, d'avoir eu la grande gentillesse de se pencher sur le cas de notre arrière-grand-père, de l'avoir fait de manière extrêmement sympathique et très élogieuse. Donc évidemment, mon frère Alain et moi-même sommes particulièrement touchés par vos propos qui honorent notre famille. Donc je vous en remercie très chaleureusement. Merci.
Thank you, Patrick and Alain De Pauw, and thank you, Sandra Cordier, for your interesting talk. I see it in the halls and the labs of the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, and it certainly also goes for the Free University of Brussels and other universities, a lot of passionate volunteers. For instance, our bird ringing center has more than 370 volunteers. So they ring birds to track their migration routes. In the entomology department, the insect department, I see people, mostly seniors, preparing insects for the collections. And one of them, Mr. Goossens, Mr. Jacques Goossens, a retired RTBF technical engineer, has become a specialist in certain groups of beetles and publishes about them. So he's a citizen scientist at heart. Our next speaker will give you the bigger picture of what citizen science is and a few nice projects where professionals and non-professionals have found each other to collaborate. Mr. Jef Van Laer, advisor of Scivil, the Flemish Knowledge Center for Citizen Science.
Hello, everyone. First of all, welcome and thank you to the team at Palaeontologica Belgica to invite me to organize this event and to invite me to speak on a subject that I love, citizen science. I'll talk about citizen science first, and I'll explain a little bit about the place that I work, the organization that I work for, Scivil, the Knowledge Center for Citizen Science in Flanders. But let's start with citizen science. And unfortunately, let me take this off first. That's a bit more comfortable. Unfortunately, I have to start my presentation with a definition. That's not the most sexy way to start a presentation, but it has to be done, and I promise you it will be quick. The definition we use at Scivil for citizen science is the following. Citizen science is scientific research conducted in part or in whole by non-professional scientists, which we call citizen scientists. And sometimes, but not always, this research is conducted in collaboration with professional scientists. Now, when I'm talking about my job to people that don't know about citizen science, a lot of my family and friends don't even know what the word means, I usually fall back on an example. And the example that I can fall back on a lot of the time, because a lot of people have heard of this project, at least, is Curieuze Neuzen. And Curieuze Neuzen, for the people who may not have heard of it, is a project from 2018. It has a successor now in 2020, Curieuze Neuzen in the garden. But Curieuze Neuzen 2018 measured the air quality in Flanders using 20,000 sensors that hung from different windows from different citizen scientists all over the region. It was a really groundbreaking project on many levels. It was a huge undertaking. It measured the air quality all over the region, and it used these different sensors. So that's one possible example of citizen science, but citizen science can be so much more. So Curieuze Neuzen is only the tip of the iceberg, and a lot of people know this example of air quality, lots of people involved and using sensors, but there's citizen science being done by people analyzing data, transcribing data, determining on research questions, research methods, communicating about citizen science or results of their projects. It can be done in air quality as a field of science. It can be done in mobility. It's often done in biodiversity as well. Paleontology, of course, archaeology, history, well-being, health, etc., etc., etc. So it's an incredibly diverse field. It's not entirely new citizen science. It's, in fact, if you would ask someone from Mary Anning's period or Louis De Pauw's period, what citizen science was, they wouldn't know the difference between citizen science and science, because before the 19th century, science was just being done in the way that we would today consider it to be citizen science. Let's take the example of Mary Anning. I'm not going to use Louis De Pauw because we've already heard a lot about him, but let's fall back on Mary Anning, an English woman from the south coast of England who was doing groundbreaking work in paleontology and geology without any formal academic training. And in fact, she's a really great example of a citizen scientist for that period, because she was not only a woman, which was extraordinary for the time, being involved in science, but also she came from a very poor background, and she used her work on collecting fossil samples from the beach in Lyme Regis to support her own life and her own family. She came from quite a poor background. Now, this example of citizens, non-professionally trained, doing scientific work, it kind of got pushed to the background because science during the 19th century started institutionalizing. People started being professionally paid for their work as a scientist. It was, of course, a good thing. They received formal training for taking part in science, and institutions and organizations started organizing themselves to make science more robust and more organized, which of course is a good thing, but also it laid the foundations for another evolution in that it took a lot of work and time to take part in science. You had to study hard. You worked in a laboratory or in a university, which was a little bit more closed off from society than citizen science was before. Now, citizen science never disappeared. It never really disappeared. And a beautiful example of this is Galaxy Zoo, one of the first big citizen science projects that came to be about 15 years ago, using digital media, right? Using the internet, using digital platforms to spread out across the entire world and involve people from all kinds of backgrounds in scientific research. Galaxy Zoo required people to look at pictures taken by the Hubble Space Telescope and classify the images of the galaxies in there. And one of the citizen scientists contributing to Galaxy Zoo was Hannie van Arkel. Hannie van Arkel was a Dutch primary school teacher in her 20s. And during her work for Galaxy Zoo, she came across this picture. And she saw, of course, a beautiful galaxy, but beneath it she saw a strange green thing. which she couldn't place. She had no idea what it was, so she went onto the online forums, and she put the picture on there. She asked the question, what the hell is this? And the organizing committee, the scientist behind the project, had no idea either, right? So she made an entirely new discovery, and ever since, this green thing in our sky has been called Hannie's object, Hannie's voorwerp, in honor of the person who discovered it first. Now, this example of Hannie being recognized for her work in citizen science is really great, because thousands of people are doing this kind of thing every day all over the world. But it's especially touching that she got recognized in this way, having an object named after her, but all these other thousands of people who do this kind of work every day don't usually get this kind of recognition, which is why I really appreciate the efforts Palaeontologica Belgica is taking to acknowledge and reward citizen scientists for their contributions to science. Citizen science has been on the rise for the past 10 to 15 years. It's become more and more popular, mostly because of the digital revolution, right? People have more access to smartphones, apps, platforms, internet web pages where they contribute to different kinds of projects. I put a selection on the slide behind me. But also there's an increased interest from academic partners and governments for this new, it's not new as we discussed, but this relatively young new term, citizen science, where people without any formal training can contribute to science, learn about science. And that's why in the past 10 to 15 years we've been seeing this increase and this boom of citizen science initiatives. All of the projects I've mentioned here are Belgian initiatives, and I'd really invite you to take a look at them. There's plenty more to discover if you're interested in taking part yourself. So this boom, this interest for citizen science from the past 10 years led to the founding of my organization, of Scivil. So to give you a bit of context there, in 2015, the Flemish Young Academy worked together with EOS, the popular science magazine, to do a study of citizen science in Flanders. Where is it now? Are professional scientists interested at all in this new phenomenon? And they published a vision paper on this. It's really relevant still to read. 6 years after it was published. And they also founded together iedereenwetenschapper.be, the website where citizen scientists can find new projects where they can contribute to research in Flanders or abroad. This led to an increased interest in the Flemish government, must have woken some politicians up, for in 2017, the Flemish government instituted a call for citizen science projects, where research projects could apply for extra funding to add a citizen science aspect onto an already existing research project, or start a new research project with a strong citizen science foundation in it. In addition, they also wanted to found a center, an organization that could support these new projects in starting citizen science. And that's where Scivil came to be, right? So in 2018, also the year where Curieuze Neuzen started, maybe not coincidentally, the mission of getting this expertise center out of the ground was given to RVO Society, an educational organization in Leuven, and a year later, in January of 2019, Scivil was founded. Now, what do we do at Scivil? First of all, we promote citizen science, first and foremost to interested parties who might be interested in getting started with citizen science. That could be people in academia, people in governmental agencies, but also people in civil society organizations, citizen scientists themselves, etc. So we're going to get the word about citizen science out. Secondly, we look for synergies and try to bring interested parties in citizen science together, because we're convinced that, especially in citizen science, working together can bring you further than going it alone. And thirdly, we support and advise citizen science initiatives on what citizen science is, what it can be, and how it can be conducted. So we gather knowledge, and for instance, we published in our 2-year existence, we published 3 different manuals on different aspects of citizen science. We also organize regular workshops, bring people together in the field to discuss and exchange experiences. We have our website and a newsletter informing people about citizen science. There's many more things to discover there. And that's my final slide. If anyone in the audience would be interested in getting involved with citizen science, starting a project themselves, that's what we're for. So please give us a call, visit our website, send us an email. And yeah, my final words should be once again to thank the organization for organizing this award, inviting me to speak on citizen science, and offer my heartfelt congratulations to all the people here receiving the award, and especially everyone contributing to citizen science in the wonderful field of paleontology today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jef Van Laer. Let's proceed to the first award for citizen paleontology. Due to Corona, we can announce both the winners of 2020 and 2021. The first Louis De Pauw awardee will be presented by Francois De Bock, board member of Palaeontologica Belgica.
Alrighty. Okay, before getting to the heart of the matter, I would like to introduce you all to, maybe some of you know him, Johannes Gutenberg. He is reputed to be a 15th century German printer, but you might be mistaken. His early life is a total mystery to historians. In his later life, he went bankrupt, and he only gained poor recognition during his life. He started as a craftsman, more specifically as a goldsmith, a minter, and exactly that historical fact is really interesting because it is the earliest occurrence that sets an example for cross-pollination between disciplines. Most of you know Johannes Gutenberg as a printer, but I just told you that he was originally a goldsmith, which are two different disciplines. Now, how can a goldsmith become a printer? This is really interesting. So he got experimented, or let's say he experimented with letter printing at the age of 30. And in that prospect, we can say that his legacy is comparable to the impact of internet on the diffusion of knowledge throughout the human world. It is important to realize what the consequences are of a single technical shortcut on progress, knowledge, and humanity. It is fair, I think, to state that Johannes Gutenberg left a lasting impression on human knowledge. Now, let's dive into our awardees' pasts. Marcel Vervoenen, his original profession is printer, but we are not here to give an award for best printer, but let's correct that, because I would say that Marcel is the printer who managed to print out the seabed. Original, isn't it? Early in the 80s, Marcel experimented to develop a method to dig up the very delicately conserved fossil shells that he found. Now, this is a challenge because most of the time he would encounter what we call unconsolidated matrix, or sand, or semi-hardened sand. And what he needed to do was to be able to harden that matrix, that surrounding ground in which he found his specimens. He needed to harden it to keep the specimens in context. And why did he need to do that? Because only in context could they yield insight in seabed formations. And those seabed formations, he managed to actually use acetone and velpon to drench his finds, and then after saturation, hardening, several phases of hardening, he managed to mushroom those specimens together. Now, what is mushrooming? You will see that on the pictures later on in Marcel's presentation. It is some kind of, it is a way of removing a whole lump of earth with specimens inside them in context, and it resembles a mushroom. What does this allow on a scientific level? It allowed for discrimination between tidal events, storms, or calmer periods, and it allowed Marcel and many other people to study the implications of shelf fauna, but the implication of those events on shelf fauna, but also on the Elasmo branch population. Marcel also nurtured an extensive collaboration with the academic world or other professional geologists, and this led to the publication of milestone works like the taphonomy of some Cenozoic seabeds from the Flemish region, released by the Belgian Geological Service in 1995. Now, setting an example of scientific rigor and professional attitude can, in our opinion, can only radiate on future generations of like-minded paleontologists, be it amongst citizen enthusiasts or professional scientists. As for Johannes Gutenberg in the past, Marcel Vervoenen is living proof that science or knowledge need to be permeable in order to stay ahead of the game. Science needs contributions from areas of expertise that may, in its own eyes, seem remote from its primary breeding ground. In times of increasing budgetary cuts, these precious contributions can only remain relevant as scientific communities reach out to citizen contributors in the long run and at an ever-growing scale. The Louis De Pauw Award aims to represent the increasing need for symbiosis between these communities. This award, as well as Palaeontologica Belgica, the organization that promotes it, are the children of citizens teaming up with academics. Now, without further delay, in the name of Palaeontologica Belgica's scientific board, as well as all the people committed to making paleontology a trailblazer in the world of sciences, I'm honored to introduce Prof.Dr. Karin Vanderkerken, vice-rector for the VUB's research policy, who will now hand over the 2020 Louis De Pauw Award to Marcel Vervoenen.
Marcel, moet naar het podium komen. Ja, and a big round of applause, please, for Marcel Vervoenen. And the award.
And it's heavy. Louis De Pauw. Rode graniet van Belgium. Graniet van Belgium.
Ja, Rouge Royal van Belgium, Marbre de Rance.
Ja, ken ik direct.
Rance Marbre. Ja.
So we'd like to congratulate you, and also I'm very honored that you organized this at the Vrije Universiteit Brussel, also because we pay a lot of attention to citizen science as a whole, but congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Wij gaan voor u.
Oh ja, ja, oké. Ja, oké.
Marcel, je mocht hier de speech komen geven.
Ja, sorry.
Wij zullen voor
ik heb
u
het in
de
het
volgende.
Nederlands.
Ja, dat is goed. Dat is
ja?
goed.
Ja?
Oké.
Ja. Geachte dames en heren, ik ben zeer vereerd om hier vandaag aanwezig te zijn. Onze aarde bevat onnoemelijk vele laagjes, bijna zoals een boek, een heel dik boek, met miljoenen bladzijden. Heel lang geleden ben ik dat boek beginnen lezen en dat doe ik nog steeds. in het boek van de geologische afzettingen en gelaagdheden van onze aarde. En ik heb er nog maar een heel klein deeltje van begrepen, hoor. De fossiele zeeafzettingen en verdwenen hiaten en bergen. Er is nog zoveel te ontdekken. Dat weten we. Als zoon van een rijkswachter groeide ik op in het Antwerpse. Met name in Rumst, tegen Boom. Rond mijn 10e jaar waren de kleiputten in Boom mijn eerste zoekterrein. En vond ik mijn allereerste fossiele schelpje. En van dan af ben ik vertrokken. Van 1979 tot 1985 heb ik de zeer interessante Pleistocene site van Bos van A, nabij Humbeek in Zemst, bemonsterd. Hier heb ik samen met mijn dochter Ingrid een bijna volledige cranium of mammoetschedel met onderkaak en met 2 gebroken slagtanden van een volwassen mannetjesmammoet opgeborgen. De mammoetschedel zelf was echter door een graafmachine gekraakt, jammer genoeg, en in ongeveer 500 stukken en fragmenten gebarsten. Met de blote hand tastend in het water en de modder tot boven onze ellebogen hebben we zoveel mogelijk stukken proberen boven te halen. Het heeft me 3 maanden tijd gekost nadien om de 3-dimensionele puzzel te kuisen, te prepareren, te puzzelen en tot slot aaneen te lijmen. Hij pronkt nu in de wereld van China, het vroegere schoolmuseum Thierry in Gent op Sint-Pietersplein. Daar is het te zien. Aangezien de mammoetschedel te groot was om hem terug door de deur te dragen, heb ik samen met de chauffeur van de vrachtwagen die de schedel opnieuw moeten uit elkaar halen. Losweken noemen we dat, met aceton. Ramadan. En gelukkig deze keer maar in 2 delen. Dus het oppercranium en het onderste deel. Jacques Herman van de Geologische Dienst van België had me begin de jaren 80 gevraagd om de verschillende Pleistocene zoogdiervondsten van die site ter beschikking te stellen van Mietje Germonpré voor haar doctoraat in de VUB. En dat heb ik van harte gedaan. Tevens werd in 1984 een nieuwe soort gastropode uit de klei van boom naar mij genoemd. Glibert tulicula vervoeneni. En dit door Arie Jansen en Martin Cadet. Glibert tulicula, dat is Dr. Glibert van de cabine hier, die eerste naam, en tulicula daarachter, dus speciersnaam. Tijdens de meer dan 40 jaar durende zoektocht in de regio Antwerpen, waarin het havengebied voortdurend nieuwe dokken in aanbouw waren, heb ik een uitgebreide verzameling opgebouwd van allerlei zeefossielen. Allerlei. En dit vooral uit het Plioceen. Ik heb ook heel wat fossiele zeebodems uitgegraven, in totaal 218. Ik kan het bijna zelf niet geloven. Welke ik thuis heb geconserveerd en beschreven. Dit was een tijdrovende bezigheid, omdat die ongelooflijk broos waren en waardoor elke verkeerde handeling tot verdere beschadiging kon leiden. Daarom moest ik voorzichtig zijn met een penseel, een naaldje en een fijn borsteltje. Om deze zeebodems te behandelen was de beste manier deze met een mengeling van aceton en velponlijm te doordringen, waarbij ik met een pipetje een druppeltje per druppeltje soms oplossing liet zakken op de tere punten. In totaal duurde het een maand per zeebodem om deze uit te prepareren. Een tijdrovende bezigheid dus. Verschillende van deze zeebodems zijn te zien in de musea in Gent, dus het Sint-Pietersplein, en in Leiden, Nederland. Omwille van de goede band met het Museum Naturalis in Leiden heb ik grote delen van mijn collectie aan hen geschonken, waarvan er enkele tentoongesteld zijn in het museum in Leiden. Door gedurende al die jaren naar schelpen te zoeken, heb ik al een mooie collectie fossiele schelpen aangelegd ook, en dit vooral uit België. Verder heb ik nog andere interesses, namelijk in de dierenwereld in het algemeen. Op basis van de systematiek heb ik mappen aangelegd, opgedeeld volgens orde, familie en genera en species. Ook heb ik nog een kleine collectie van de recente schelpen als vergelijking met de fossielen. Als besluit wil ik hier de vele mensen bedanken die mij steeds hebben gesteund voor mijn bijdrage in de geologie en de fossiele dierkunde. Mijn dank gaat uit naar volgende Nederlanders. Arie Jansen, ondertussen overleden. Martin Cadet, Frank Wesseling, Ronald Power, Freddy van Nieuwland, George Simmons, Anthonie van Peurzen, Hans Keukelaar, Sylvia van Leeuwen, Dick Mol, John de Vos en Tom Meijer. Ook mijn vrienden uit België wil ik hartelijk danken. Noël Gaillet, Robert van Tiegem, André Delsaert, ook onpas overleden, Natal Severens, Adrien Lister, Mietje Germonpré, natuurlijk, Romain de Moor, Jacques Herman van de Geologische Dienst, Stijn Everaert, Piet Laga, ook van de Geologische Dienst, Etienne Stoorbout, Thierry Moorkens en André Verhekken. Mijn speciale dank gaat aan Anthonie Hellemond, hier aanwezig. Dank u. En last but not least, dank aan mijn echtgenote Annie en dochter Ingrid voor hun vele geduld en medewerking bij het aanleggen van mijn collectie. Mocht ik iemand vergeten zijn, verontschuldig mij, diegene wie ik ooit heb mee samengewerkt. Nogmaals hartelijk dank, Marcel Vervoenen.
Goed gedaan, Marcel. Ik zou je de prijs kunnen geven.
Dank u.
Congratulations, Marcel Vervoenen. Kevin Nolis, board member of Palaeontologica Belgica, will now introduce our second Louis De Pauw awardee, the awardee of 2021.
Good afternoon. Research on fossil marine mammals began in our country in the beginning of the 19th century and gained momentum during the construction of the fortification belt around Antwerp in the second half of the 19th century. For more than 150 years, Antwerp has been an important center for the discovery and study of fossil marine mammals. Even today, countless fossil bones are often discovered during excavations on construction sites in the city center. When this happens, Mark Bosselaers is always present along with a team of volunteers to salvage the remains and then rebuild skeletons at home. Mark's work is very impressive. From a pile of bits and pieces of bone, he is able to reassemble complete skulls or skeletons. He does this with a great deal of patience, know-how, and skill. In this way, he has already assembled and described a number of new species of whales. Thanks to his contribution, the already large collection of the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences in Brussels, where he also works as a research associate, has been further expanded. Mark also works across the border as a curator of marine mammals at the Royal Zealand Scientific Society and as a volunteer at the Zeus Museum. There too, he enriches the collections with the fossil remains and type material found in the Netherlands. Mark totally fits the profile of the perfect citizen scientist. He is a visual artist and master of arts, but in his spare time he studies the fossil marine mammal fauna of the North Sea Basin. Through years of self-study and fieldwork, Mark has become a world expert on fossil cetaceans and barnacles. In addition, he also does research on sea turtles, and contributes to international research in Miocene, Pliocene, and Pleistocene sediments in the Mediterranean. It is fair to say that Mark is a man of many talents. Not only does he recover the fossil bones, he also prepares, mounts, draws, and describes them. And he does this with a certain sense of humor, as in 2016 when describing a completely new genus and species of baleen whale, a badly fragmented and fragile skull that Mark was able to put back together with a lot of patience and using lots of Felpen glue. The animal was cleverly labeled as Fragilicetus velponi. Mark did not pursue a career as a professional paleontologist in the pure sense of the word, but years of work and dedication have led the academic world in Belgium and abroad to recognize him as a specialist of equal value. As a citizen scientist, Mark has an impressive list of important scientific publications to his name. In addition, like many other citizen scientists, he spares no time nor effort to save, store, and make an inventory of all the material he has found, or that has been brought to him by other collectors and volunteers. Mark Bosselaers is also well known among local paleontological associations. Many people know him as a reference person for fossil cetaceans and call on him for help in identifying specimens. Mark is always willing to do this. His dedication and polyvalent cooperation are inspiring and make young people enthusiastic about similar research. Because Mark Bosselaers is also very active abroad and has made valuable contributions to research, he has already deservedly received several awards, such as the Saporta Prize in France in 2018 and the Van der Leyen Prize in the Netherlands in 2019. Today, there is also a national recognition. With this award, we would like to thank Mark for his years of selfless dedication as a citizen scientist, in which he, like Louis De Pauw, uses innovative methods to salvage, assemble, and describe the fossil skeletons that he finds. Mark, in the name of Palaeontologica Belgica, and on behalf of the whole community of professional and citizen scientists active in the research and promotion of Belgian paleontology, I thank you for your work and devotion, and I am honored to introduce Mr. Thomas Dermine, the State Secretary of Science Policy, who will hand over the Louis De Pauw Prize 2021.
So we'd like to welcome on stage Secretary of State for Science Policy, Mr. Thomas Dermine. A round of applause. And Mark, of course. So, congratulations, Mark.
Wonderful. Here you go. Wonderful prize. Super.
Okay, thank you very much. You can say a word. Vous pouvez dire quelque chose.
Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see that some people are present in an academic forum on a Saturday afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be with you. Mark, do you need some support to assist you with something? No, anyway, thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure to see you. It's a great pleasure to be with you for this Citizen Award. I believe that science and citizens should be more and more interlinked on many fronts. On data collection, you know, at the federal level, but also in universities, it's a great challenge to enrich the type of data we have and to decentralize the data collection, so it's essential to involve citizens. It's also a very particular period, and we can all see it, that science has never been so important. With the pandemic that we have been through, we've never seen so many scientists on the TV screens, but at the same time we see that science is being challenged by the way we access and the way we treat information in the digital age. And so what I like about citizen science is that it's also an amazing tool to promote the scientific methods. And thanks a lot to all of you who are involved in this kind of approaches. Thanks to Mark, thanks to you being involved in those progresses. I think that now more than ever, science needs to be at the core of policy. Science needs to be at the core of the education for our children. And every step, every ceremony that we have to have role models such as Mark doing interesting work in science is a step forward in promoting science, and it's at the core of the challenge of our time. So thank you very much, and congratulations again to Mark. I'm very curious to get to know what you're going to do with your different tools. So thanks a lot, and great pleasure to be with you. I'm very curious.
So, good afternoon, dear contemporaries. I'll try to explain to you in a few words how one becomes a citizen scientist, an amateur paleontologist. If I understood things well, I just received the Louis De Pauw Prize. And on the picture you can see Louis. You saw him a few times already today. You see him here in front of Herpetocetus scaldensis, which he found to be très spécial, which is indeed the case. Apart from playing around a bit with dinosaurs in his young years, he did lots and lots of very important work on whales, which is, of course, much more important. As you can see also, I still have to do some work to reach also the same level as he did on vestimentary standards. And also my moustache is slightly smaller. Apart from that, I try to do as well as he did. I show you a few pictures of mine. At the left, you can see me at the age of 2, photographed by my father. In the center, you see me too, in my middle-aged years, and then at the right, that's at the left. Yeah, depends how you. At the right, me in my old days with my horse. Speaking about old days, I have to tell you that generally, when you are to receive a prize, you're more or less fossilizing yourself, which actually is the case. At least I'm falling apart. And yeah, today I have, as I wrote there, the dubious honor to receive my 3rd prize. And by the time you receive your 3rd prize, you're like a walking dead. I started very early, very promising, I think, because at the age of 6, I found this very beautiful, shiny piece of charcoal in the gutter of the main street of Turnhout. But it was actually my mother that gave me my first geology lesson and told me, charcoal is dirty, put it back. But I put it in my pocket, of course. And so, yeah, I was especially inspired by my elder brother, whom you see there. He has a collection of special hats. This, if I remember well, is from Lapland. And he's a professional biologist. He's a doctor in biology even. And he's an arachnologist. And one of the new species he described, many new species. One of them he named after Zappa, because he was a little bit a fan of Zappa. And you can recognize easily, indeed, these tiny cannabis eyes, and also the mustache ones again. But he helped and inspired me a lot indeed. And then the whale story actually started in 1972, when we had a picnic in Zandvliet, which is near the port of Antwerp. And my mother always wanted to have a picnic in such an idyllic, romantic place like you see over there. And it's actually there that I found my first whale bones. One of them survived. Unfortunately, this is not a whale bone. It's a Morse bone. But yeah, it's the oldest find I still have. As you can see, it bears number 3. The other ones I lost. It was parts of vertebrae, and I didn't keep them any longer. And yeah, why, apart from all the previous things, why does one become an amateur scientist? Well, because I wanted answers to the big questions of life. And what are these big questions? Why do we live? And especially, why do we have to live? What's the driving force of life? How does natural selection work? That kind of questions. I forgot to tell you that I did not become a professional paleontologist actually because I was not smart enough. There's some problems with my body. For some reason, I'm rather devoid of muscles, but also of memory, and it's not a very good combination. And so, instead of a professional paleontologist, I became an artist, and so that's one of my paintings there, a portrait of Darwin, the great Darwin. Of course, also my example. And then I grew up in the time of the organigrams, and they were very popular in our youth. So I made one, and I tried to put together all the influences that I had. And yeah, I had a lot of chance, I have to tell you, a lot of luck. First of all, in Belgium, and especially around Antwerp, there is lots and lots of fossil material, fossil whale material there in the ground. Yeah, as I told you, I had to tell it now only that I have limited physical powers, but I forgot because I don't have memory. In the 1980s, 90s, there was a big economic boom, and so there were enormously many construction sites, and that was, of course, a big opportunity to collect whales. Another chance was that lots of young, new cetologists were around at the museum in Brussels at the time, especially Felix Marx was there, and Alberto Colaretta, with whom I worked together a lot. Of course, Olivier Lambert, but he's already senior now, I'm afraid. And then I worked together with lots and lots and lots of amateurs, people who helped me. I have to thank especially the people who collect shark teeth, because they don't like whale bones, but they dig them up, and they were so friendly to put them aside for me. Often they put them on a pile and they put a note on it for Mark. And they left it on the side like that. And then the result of all this, and this arrow is wrong now, it was originally correct. So this bottom arrow in your mind, you have to turn it 180 degrees, because that's the output of the organigram, and the result was indeed a steady growing output of scientific results. And of course, I have one speciality, maybe one lucky thing, and that happens to be a puzzling one, namely these fossils, as you heard from Marcel, that a mammoth can break in 500 pieces, a whale can break in a few thousand pieces, and the most difficult one I ever restored was this one, a gift from Leo Dufresne, a rather complete neurocranium of I forgot the name now of this animal, but anyway, it's a cachalot. That's also the sperm whale, the skull of a sperm whale. And of course, we glue these things with Velpon. You heard the word a few times already, and these are the iconic tubes. Difficult to find these days, but several similar glue works as well. It's all one big family of glues, actually. It's polyvinyl acetate. And then I contributed to lots and lots of publications, most of them with other professional scientists, more than 45 altogether now so far. And for all these things, I have to thank, just like Marcel, lots of people, and I'm equally afraid that I forgot a few, which I will have to add afterwards, I think, in this last category of the enemies. So please forgive me if I forgot to put your name on. And then I wish to thank you for, I wish to thank my wife in the first place, and my flamboyant wife, which supports me very, very strongly. I wish to thank you, the audience, for your patience and your enthusiasm. And then I want to say goodbye to all of you, but not without first playing for you a tiny little Thanksgiving song on my South African trumpet of praise. And so I brought my trident, and then, yeah, the trident has to go there, and then my foot has to go there also, and then I thank you very much for your attention.
What a work, what a man, what a personality, what a humor, what a nice pullover. a whale pullover. And what a relaxed and revolutionary way of presenting. It's all Mark Bosselaers. Congratulations. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we will hand over the awards for the professional paleontologists. So see you in 5 minutes.
It's going to be a 10-minute break, not a 5-minute break, so have a bit more time. Thank you very much. See you around.
Okay, let's all take our seats. Sorry for this delay. And let's continue awarding prizes. Now it's time to award for 2 awards for professional paleontologists, and Anthonie Hellemond will give an introduction and hand over the award of 2020.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the second part of this event. Now, together with the Louis De Pauw Award, our organization also honors professional or academic scientists whose contributions to Belgian paleontology made a significant impact. The Palaeontologica Belgica Award is presented to paleontologists who greatly value, effectuate and endorse the collaboration with citizen scientists and whose passion for research stretches further than their office desks. This award is a token of respect and appreciation towards paleontologists who radiate their passion for research, fieldwork and education to a broad audience. It also honors the passion, the dedication and the effort spent on Belgian research. In a contemporary academic setting, it is often difficult to make an impact with very specific and elaborate regional research. Publishing results in regional journals while consciously not aiming for the high-impact periodicals requires lots of courage and is often frowned upon by peers within the scientific community. In times where the value of a scientist is greatly determined or even defined by the amount of exotic and spectacular international research, it is considered as a faux pas to publish promising findings in a regional scientific journal. Therefore, regional observations are sometimes neglected and because they do not meet the unspoken and often biased editorial criteria. Contributing to Belgian paleontology is therefore not always that attractive from a career point of view. Especially for young researchers, they will find it very hard to recover any support to work on Belgian paleontological topics. Lack of support results from the misconception that regional research does not produce any groundbreaking discoveries and therefore doesn't generate as much funding. Topics such as taxonomy, regional paleoecology, ichnology, biostratigraphy are at risk of even becoming extinct in the future if they are not valued anymore. The Palaeontologica Belgica Award wishes to counter this trend as it is a recognition for all paleontologists who devote themselves to regional research and unpopular topics. It is a laud to the scientist at heart who acts beyond the classic academic and institutional borders. A praise to go against old ivory towers and outdated structures. The award itself expresses the admiration for somebody who is not afraid and at the same time understands the benefits of working with citizen scientists and actively promotes it. As is the case for many sciences, paleontology is not a 9-to-5 job. Besides research, fieldwork, lab time, teaching, a paleontologist can be found giving lectures, organizing workshops, planning field trips, and working on outreach during his free time. The winner of the Palaeontologica Belgica Award is somebody who understands that working together and sharing knowledge is an asset. In short, Palaeontologica Belgica Award is an honorary recognition for the modern-day paleontologist who actively collaborates with citizen scientists, who is not afraid to work on Belgian research topics and who dares to think and act outside of the box. And as winner of the first Palaeontologica Belgica Award 2020, I would like to introduce a man who embodies everything I just said. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to the first ever laureate of the Palaeontologica Belgica Award, Dr. Koen Stein.
I wrote a few words. Unfortunately, they will not be as funny as Mark's. I tried to put a joke in it. So I would like to thank a few people, and especially the organization that made it possible for me to do what I do. Of course, my lovely wife for putting up with lots and lots of rocks and fossils and dinosaurs in our living room. Thanks to Palaeontologica Belgica and the organizers for awarding me this prize. I also want to thank a number of people that supported me through the years on a number of occasions. Funding agencies, FWO and Belspo, for providing much needed support to fundamental science projects such as my own in the past 7 years. In particular, I would like to thank Philippe Claes, Pascal Godefroy and Jacques Verniers for encouraging me to study abroad and follow up on my interests after finishing my MSc in geology in Belgium. Without their initial support, and in the case of Philippe and Pascal, this is still ongoing support actually, I would not have found my way into a career in paleontology. So a big part of this is thanks to you. What do you call a dinosaur that never gives up? A triceratops. With this, I want to say that the career path of a paleontologist is usually not so easy. When I finished my MSc in paleobiology at the University of Bristol in England in 2006, it was very difficult for me to return to a normal life in Belgium, coming from a research environment with an international vibe. My parents wanted me to become a high school teacher because it provides a steady job. I rebelled and started what they hoped was the last phase of my puberty at the ripe age of 23. My passion was with paleontology, dinosaurs, and the history of life on Earth. I really wanted to pursue a PhD, but I kind of hit a brick wall. Despite having graduated with the highest distinction in Bristol, I could not apply for FWO funding because the grades of my MSc in Belgium at Ghent University were not high enough. So I tried the IWT scholarship. This is a funding scheme that doesn't exist anymore today because it has merged together with the FWO. At the time, none of the 4 applicants who were pursuing paleontological topics were funded. In hindsight, that was not so unexpected, as the IWT was meant to fund mostly applied science. Long story short, it took me a full year of searching and applying, and for a while I actually did become a high school teacher, because like everyone else, I had bills to pay. This only confirmed my previous beliefs about not wanting to become a high school teacher, or rather not being in the high school system. Finally, I found a position, half paid, half wage, at the University of Bonn in Germany, and from there I was able to start my career as a scientist. I have now been a postdoc for more than 10 years, and I'm very happy, really very happy with what I have done and that I'm able to do. And I got lucky to have made it so far. I have several friends and colleagues who have brilliant minds and have made stunning discoveries in the field of paleontology. Yet due to the lack of available funding or full-time research positions, they have thrown in the towel and pursued other careers. Imagine, these are masters of science who worked blood, sweat, and tears for 3 to 5 years to obtain a PhD and did some postdoc years, usually all funded with taxpayers' money, and those skills and knowledge are then lost to the field forever because there are no available positions. One can see this as a bad investment. If you were an economist, you could see this as a bad investment by society. But I firmly believe that society should invest in young researchers, especially in all STEM fields. Give young scientists the opportunity to grow, but also give them perspectives of a personal life, so they don't have to dedicate all of their time to pursuing funding to keep doing what they do. The brain drain that we see is, in my opinion, rather the consequence of an academic system that relies on cheap labor, like PhD students and postdoc, who are funded externally and with temporary contracts. This makes for a competitive nature in candidates, that's true, but it has also created an oversupply in degrees, and the number of tenured research positions has not grown proportionally. On the contrary, take for example my current employer, the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Science, the reference institute in Belgium for research in paleontology and natural science. I have to say, I am not employed as a researcher, I am employed as an educator. The last paleontologist to actually have been hired was in 2012, and it's my esteemed colleague Olivier Lambert, and the department has only seen retirements since. And this is not just for paleontology. I would like to quote Camille Pisani, the former director, upon her own retirement in April 2019 in the magazine Trends. Start quote, "The Michel government would reform the federal scientific institutions. Instead, these institutions have lost even more resources and flexibility. Since 2014, we have lost 1/10 of our employees, although we have tried to protect the staff, especially the scientific staff, as much as possible. Everyone has done their best to seek outside resources. The people fought to keep doing what they were doing the best they could. But maybe that was the wrong choice. Many people are exhausted or dropped out with a burnout. The next federal government really can't continue that austerity policy." End quote. I think most of you can conclude that the year 2020 has not really improved that situation. Despite all setbacks, we have now made it to 2021. And finally, there is renewed opportunity to invest in fundamental science, such as paleontology and other earth sciences. Any paleontologist can tell you that all 5 big mass extinctions ever coincided with major environmental changes, regardless of the cause. More than ever, should we take this chance to arm ourselves with knowledge from the past to face the consequences of environmental changes of the future. It will take a little bit of political courage from policymakers to make long-term commitments to improve budgets of federal and regional scientific institutions, but the rewards will ever be so high when we can more accurately predict what is ahead of us. Lastly, I want to emphasize that topics in paleontology, especially extinct giant reptiles and mammals, provide an excellent toolkit to engage with young and even very young people on complicated scientific matters. I firmly believe that research and outreach in this field does not only benefit society directly, but also indirectly by planting seeds of curiosity and wonder about the natural worlds in the minds of children. To put it very simply, dinosaurs can change the world for the better. In this respect, I would like to encourage everyone here who enjoys and engages in paleontological activities, professional or non-professional, to take up a responsibility to promote, facilitate, and if possible, also fund these activities to ensure the continuity of paleontological research in Belgium. The startup of an organization like Palaeontologica Belgica, and these awards are a very good example of such initiatives. I applaud the executive board with this initiative, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Koen, for your honest and critical testimony. Francois De Bock will now introduce our second Palaeontologica Belgica awardee, the awardee of 2021.
Thank you, Reinout. I will start introducing Olivier Lambert by sketching his educational curriculum. Olivier started, he completed a master's degree in geology and earth sciences at l'Université Catholique de Louvain in 2000. Then he started a research doctorate in paleontology at l'Université Libre de Bruxelles shortly after. Then he successfully pursued his thesis on long-snouted dolphins and beaked whales from the Neogene of the Antwerp area under the supervision of Dr. Pascal Godefroy from the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences and Christian Muison of the Muséum National d'Histoire Naturelle in Paris, where he would later on conduct postdoctoral research before becoming an official researcher at the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences in 2012. I would like to quote Pierre-Joseph van Beneden, which Olivier Lambert himself picked up as an opener for his thesis. Quote, "We Belgians constitute only a small nation, but let us not neglect the example set by small nations. Without even suspecting it, lies buried between our own feet a true paleontological Pompeii, which indeed does not conceal vases, columns, nor temples, but rather remains of organized creatures, perhaps even more important to science, which have escaped investigation over the centuries but have spread life through the land where our rich metropolis today stands. He was talking of Antwerp. At the exact same place where today tigers, lions, and bears roar in ironclad cages, once roamed legions of dolphins and whales, loudly spraying through the vast seas with their elegant fins, never having to fear an encounter with men. Now, this quote from Pierre-Joseph van Beneden is interesting because we can say that Olivier Lambert picked up where van Beneden's legacy went to a stop. He took it even further by not only considering extinct cetaceans as objects of anatomical study, but also investigating further into their comparative paleoecology in Belgium and abroad, carrying out sequential stratigraphy and histology. His fieldwork includes excavations in Peru on outcrops from the Eocene to the Pliocene in collaboration with Dutch, French, Italian, Peruvian colleagues, as well as in the Neogene of the Antwerp area in Belgium. His expertise in the evolution of these marine mammals, their adaptations to aquatic life, their past diversity and disparity, and their interactions with other marine organisms has invaluably enriched Belgium's scientific corpus on that matter. His fruitful collaborations with autodidact citizen scientist Mark Bosselaers are another proof that passion does not come to a stop at institutional or labor-related boundaries. This very mindset, coupled to tangible results, is what Palaeontologica Belgica Award aims to congratulate, encourage, and promote. Exemplary paleontological research in Belgium's present-day context. Allow me now, in the name of Palaeontologica Belgica's scientific board, as well as all the people who dedicate their lives to paleontological research in Belgium, to hand over this 2021 Palaeontologica Belgica Award to Olivier Lambert. Well-deserved, congratulations.
Well, I prepared a speech. First of all, I would like to thank you for granting me this award. I feel very honored. Thanks also for giving me the opportunity to give such a speech. I must say that before preparing my text, I could see some obvious persons and specimens to be mentioned. But many other people's names came to my mind during this process, and I find it very interesting. My goal during this talk will be to tell you a bit more about people, mostly from a citizen science aspect, and fossils who shaped the first 20 years of my career as a paleontologist, studying marine mammals, especially from the North Sea Basin. First, a bit of historical context. Since the 19th century, the Neogene, so the Miocene and Pliocene of the area of Antwerp, yielded vast amounts of marine mammal remains, including fossils of whales, dolphins, but also seals and sea cows. The historical collection of the Institute of Natural Sciences is mostly based on specimens discovered during the second part of the 19th century, when, as mentioned before, fortifications were built around the city of Antwerp. It's an example of a map from that time. So most of the material at that time was collected by people without any training in natural sciences. Soldiers, workers, digging for the forts and the ditches there. And this very large collection, probably the largest in Europe, has been first studied by various scientists, including Pierre-Joseph van Beneden, who was mentioned before, one of the most prominent 19th century cetologists. Some of these early works include detailed anatomical descriptions and are in some cases beautifully illustrated. Here is one example of a plate of one of Van Beneden's famous atlases on baleen whales. And most of these specimens have been mounted for exhibition by Louis De Pauw at the museum. Anyway, important gaps were retained, including the precise geological age of many specimens, the low number of Pliocene dolphins, the fragmentary state of many type specimens, etc. And considering all these gaps, more recently collected fossils of marine mammals have the potential to considerably improve our knowledge of the Neogene marine mammal faunas from the North Sea. And during the second part of the 20th century, most major discoveries of marine mammal remains in northern Belgium were done by amateur paleontologists. For example, along the New Ring around the city of Antwerp, inaugurated in 1969, in several new docks in the harbor of Antwerp, for example, the Churchill dock and the Vrasene dock in 1987. This is probably the time when I started to be interested in stones, fossils, and bones, an interest that I probably inherited from my mother and grandfather. The first fossil that I found was a shark tooth, collected from the Belgian coast. It could be one of the two specimens here, but I'm not sure. And this made a relatively good start for my career, as these teeth are from marine animals and from the North Sea basin, but still no mammal yet. I had to wait for my next find, which was a cattle tooth, a cow tooth, that was carefully excavated from the garden of my parents. That one is unfortunately lost to science. I don't have any picture, but I later learned that this type of fossil was not so rare. You certainly know that cattle, the cow, belong to the same group as cetaceans. Here is a creationist cartoon mocking the terrestrial origin of whales and their close relationship with terrestrial artiodactyls, including the cows. Then another important step occurred when I first visited a large fossil and mineral fair, Interminéral, in Liège, with my parents and my great-uncle, which is shown here, Michel de Taille. He's a very dedicated mineral and fossil collector, and Michel really sparked my fascination for extinct animals and the history of life in general. At that fossil fair in Liège, I could acquire an ichthyosaur tooth that is shown here from the Jurassic of Lyme Regis in southwestern England. This is a marine tetrapod found close to the North Sea, but again, not a mammal. Still, this is a nice opportunity to mention for a second time one of the greatest amateur paleontologists that was introduced earlier. So Mary Anning, who contributed to the history of paleontology with discoveries of extinct marine reptiles and pterosaurs from the Lyme Regis cliffs, where that tooth was found. A bit later, as mentioned, I decided to study geology at the UCL, and for my master's thesis, I had the chance to work on dinosaur remains collected in Inner Mongolia under the supervision of Marie-Claire Van Dijk at UCL and Pascal Godefroy at the Institute. And this was the first step at the Institute of Natural Sciences. And there was a very attractive skeleton hanging on the ceiling of the entrance hall. And being himself a specialist of dinosaurs, Pascal Godefroy wisely recommended me to focus my PhD thesis on something else, not dinosaurs, just to avoid unproductive competition. And then we went in the collection with Pascal and Pierre Bulting, the former head of our department. They both knew about the potential of the marine mammal collection, and after some email contacts with a colleague abroad, we could identify some groups of tooth whales, odontocetes from the Miocene of the Antwerp area, to be revised during my PhD, especially Urinodelphinids, an extinct family of hyperlongirostrine dolphins, and beaked whales, a modern family of deep-diving tooth whales. This is how my work on cetaceans started about 20 years ago. Concerning Urinodelphinids, there is a large historical collection at the Institute. here is a photo of one of these beautiful skulls collected during the 19th century. However, a specimen collected by an amateur paleontologist proved very useful for my PhD. A skull was discovered by Robert Marquet, a citizen scientist, specialist of neogene mollusks, in 1976 during the excavation of a metro station in Antwerp. Just a few hundred of meters from the Antwerp Zoo, where I saw living dolphins for the first time, which is a funny coincidence. Because of the care Robert took to collect the specimen, he did find tiny ear bones, the malleus and the incus, which are just a few millimeters high, and they brought very useful information for the discussion of the phylogenetic relationships of that extinct family. At the very beginning of my PhD project, I clearly remember my first meeting with Mark Bosselaers. He was comparing fossil specimens in the citation hall of the Institute. There was no elevator at that time, but apart from that, the setting was nearly the same as on that photo. And we started to discuss about fossils from Antwerp. And from that very start of our collaboration, Mark generously offered me access to his more important specimens and brought me to the field in temporary outcrops around the city of Antwerp. On my very first visit to the Durgangdok, we collected with Mark a small dolphin skull that was much later published as the geologically oldest true dolphin from the North Sea. This is the only important cetacean fossil I ever found in Antwerp. Most of the work I do is based on discoveries from amateur paleontologists and colleagues. At about the same time, colleagues, including Thierry Smith, who is here, suggested me to visit Paul Gigas in Antwerp. Paul was a former researcher at the Institute of Tropical Medicine in Antwerp, and together with his son Pierre, he gathered an impressive collection of marine mammal fossils. Paul very kindly let me study several important specimens of his collection, which were later donated to the Institute. A first example is this partial skeleton of a relative of the narwhal and the beluga from the early Pliocene of the Vrasene Dock that I mentioned earlier. This specimen helped confirming that in the past, monodontids, the family of the narwhal and beluga, were not restricted to the Arctic and subarctic regions. Interestingly, this unique specimen also displays some shark tooth marks, providing clues about trophic relationships between sharks and cetaceans. A second fossil donated by Paul Gigas is the skull of a porpoise, a phocénid, discovered again by Robert Marquet. And based on that fossil, we could name a new porpoise, Brabocetus gigaseorum. Another porpoise skull from slightly younger deposits was discovered by Christian Oudemakers, another citizen scientist, near Callao. The many fragments of the skull were already at that time put together by Mark Bosselaers, and these two new porpoises provided critical information about the dispersal of phocénids, porpoises, from the North Pacific, where they most likely originated, to the North Atlantic and the North Sea via the Bering Strait and the Arctic Ocean, at a time when it was not fully covered with sea ice. As you probably know, such a situation is getting repeated nowadays. The ice is melting there, potentially allowing for new contacts between Atlantic and Pacific porpoise populations. They will probably not have much time to socialize there, as the area will soon be invaded by very different and, I'm afraid, much less friendly marine things. Let's move to sperm whales. Another very interesting group of cetaceans. Some years ago, two specimens were discovered by Leo Dufresne. I'm sorry, this is the only photo I have of Leo from his Facebook profile. The first skull was found at the Antwerp International Airport. It's the skull of a juvenile individual, which was prepared again by Mark in a way that several parts of the skull could be removed to give access to underlying bones. And that specimen helped solving the phylogenetic relationships of an extinct diminutive sperm whale first described by Abel a long time ago. The preparation of the second specimen, I will not talk much longer about that. Mark already showed a photo of that. It was found in Postix in Berchem, and Mark had to put together thousands of pieces to build this specimen, which is now probably the most complete fossil sperm whale skull for the North Sea. I would also like to briefly talk about research projects outside Belgium, as part of them included amateur paleontologists. Among them, the role of Klaas Post has been especially important. Klaas is a Dutch amateur paleontologist affiliated to the Natuurhistorisch Museum of Rotterdam. And after some preliminary collaborations on marine mammals from the North Sea, Klaas organized a first trip to study fossil beaked whales trawled from the seafloor of South Africa in Cape Town, together with my Italian colleague who is there on the photo, Giovanni Bianucci. After this successful first project, Klaas suggested to visit the Pisco Basin on the southern coast of Peru to collect and study beaked whale and sperm whale fossils. And this is probably the best place in the world to study extinct marine mammals. One of these trips led to the exciting discovery of a giant sperm whale from the late Miocene. This is a photo taken just a few minutes after the discovery by Jelle Römer, who is there also, after the discovery of that specimen. And near Klaas, you can also see our Peruvian colleague, Mario Urbina, who is another self-educated paleontologist who discovered so many localities and fossils in Peru. That new sperm whale is quite spectacular, being, among others, characterized by its huge teeth, as you can see from that photo. This was only the beginning of the many expeditions we organized and keep organizing in the Pisco Basin, and Klaas and Mario played a critical role in the onset of these very productive projects. I did not talk much about baleen whales, as this group is mostly studied by Mark. However, several volunteers at the Institute contributed significantly to the preparation of baleen whale specimens discovered in northern Belgium. And some of those are very large, so it can be a long process to prepare them. And I'll have a few photos here of some of them, including Mark Swolspoel, Vic Kal, Jeff Segers, who is there, and the late Francois van den Bos. I will finish with a few words on pinnipeds, seals. In the Neogene of Belgium, seals are mostly known from isolated postcranial bones. And when my past PhD student, Leonard de Waal, started his thesis, Paul Gigas, again him, told us about a partial seal skeleton that was discovered a long time ago by a Dutch fossil collector, Annie Gommers, along the Antwerp Ring. The skeleton was acquired by Mark Bosselaers, who very generously donated it to the Institute. It was then studied by Leonard, and this resulted in two very nice papers, one dealing with the systematics and phylogeny of the new seal genus Nanophoca, and the other focusing on the peculiar bone microstructure of that tiny Miocene seal. And to be complete, these studies also included material donated by Berghuizen, Frederik Mollen, that I've seen there, Luc Antonis, and once again, Paul Gigas. As a conclusion, for the last 20 years, my work on the evolution of marine mammals benefited greatly from the many contributions of amateur paleontologists and private collectors. Further collaboration, communication between these broadly overlapping and highly complementary worlds will undoubtedly benefit to all of us. I would like to add that I feel extremely lucky to work in an institution that is unique in Belgium, allowing us to combine fundamental research activities in the field of natural sciences with so many tools of communication towards a broader audience, as mentioned by Koen earlier. Let's hope this will last for many more years, and for that we need funding, of course. And just to complete the circle, here is the next generation, collecting shark teeth on the Belgian coast, as I did when I was a kid. Thank you for your attention and for this award, which is dedicated to Paul Gigas. Thank you.
Congratulations, Olivier Lambert. Just stay on the stage, please, because we want to welcome Marcel Vervoenen, Koen Stein, and Mark Bosselaers with their prize on the stage for a short picture moment.
round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Great winners and great speeches today. Sven van Uitvangen, board member of Palaeontologica Belgica, will now close this ceremony. So, Sven, it's all yours.
In closing, scientia et miratio, science and wonder. These words characterize the very essence of our organization and everything we stand for. It's our foundation and drive, and without a doubt, a credo we share with all those gathered here. This approach also affects both the scientific community and what can be referred to as the greater public. We are the ones who build bridges, participatory science, collaborative networks offering a mutual feeling of respect and trust. This is conceivably one of the strong benefits of citizen science. Not only do citizen scientists contribute convenient data, they're also able to analyze it or at least document it in a way it contributes to science and scientific insights. This can be a great help for scientists who are often limited in time and resource constraints and are frequently confronted with the fact that it is sometimes nearly impossible to collect and analyze data and/or specimens. Globally speaking, the results of such cooperative research can be used in a myriad of ways: inform local policies and museums, enhance the overall education, conserve natural resources, gain insight, educate an audience. Or even better, bestow that very same audience with the very same wonder we take for granted and shamelessly use in our tagline: share the astonishment. I don't think we need to convince anybody of the advantageous nature of citizen science, or, perhaps in better wording, the symbiosis of science and wonder. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the support. We would like to thank everybody attending our first event during these somehow troubled and COVID-ridden times. The family De Pauw, especially Alain and Patrick De Pauw. Scivil, the Flemish Knowledge Center for Citizen Science. State Secretary of Science Policy, Thomas Dermine. Frédéric Lerouge and Ivo Kesselaars for visual support. Florence Pelletier of the Marble Museum of Reims for the Pierre Bleu and the Rouge de Reims used to create the awards. The Free University of Brussels, especially vice-rector Karin Vanderkerken. All awardees for being here and their valuable contributions made to science. All representatives from Belgian universities and members of the Belgian Academy of Earth Sciences. Biographer and chronicler Sandra Cordier, Reinout Verbeke for lending his voice and talents, Thierry Hubin for capturing this afternoon, and our own Ayla and Aurélie for the logistic support. And last, but definitely not least, all our partners from the institutions, the industry, the associations, the academic world, and independent researchers. You are too numerous, and we all know who you are. There's a saying that poetically tells us that the earth has music for those who listen. We couldn't agree more. So in the name of Paleontologica Belgica, keep listening and thank you. Scientia et miratio.
This concludes the end of this award ceremony. As president, there's only one thing I can say. I wish you all a very safe drive or trip homewards. And we'd like to make an appointment for next year. So check your inboxes and we'll keep you posted. Thank you very much for being here today. You were so kind.